Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Cover 2 Show presented by Tigervision. I'm Patrick Neal, along with my co-host, Grayson Mann. Grayson, how you doing today?
I am doing so well. It was quite the weekend for sports. A lot of great things happened. If you were a baseball fan, boxing, college football, NFL, everybody had something to look forward to. We have a lot of things to cover, upsets, explosions of points on offense. There's so much. Where do you want to get started?
I mean, it was such a great week for college football. I think potentially the best week we have ever seen. Definitely one of the best. I think the biggest upset we probably got to start with, Alabama losing to A&M at A&M 41-38. It was crazy. I mean, most people did not give A&M a chance in this game.
Neither did we.
Yeah, I definitely didn't. But A&M proved a lot of people wrong this weekend. Calzada, he put a great performance in, was super resilient, even got injured in the fourth quarter, came back, led the team to a win. I mean, it was just a great game. You wanna elaborate a little bit?
So for my perspective, I was at like this Fright Night thing, and I'm on my phone, I'm checking the stuff, and I'm like, wait, I can actually watch this game live. So we're in line, and I got a bunch of people surrounding me. They're like, what's the score? What's the score? And all I can just see is this energy by A&M. They've had shut out all the noise. They got this stigma of this big bad Bama out of the way. They took care of business. Nick Saban is now 24-1 against his former assistants. Jimbo Fisher is the one to do it, and it was really sweet to watch.
A&M just put on a great overall performance. They got a lot of help from the likes of A-Chain and Anaya Smith and not CJ Spiller. He's a Clemson player, but Isaiah Spiller. And again, great performance from Calzada with Small hitting the game-winning field goal.
Great.
But A&M was able to get a lot of push on Alabama's offensive line. They were able to get pressure on Bryce Young. Young didn't have the best of games. He was all right, but could have been a little bit better. And Bama's secondary, when it came to get stops, at the most crucial points, they weren't really able to get them, giving up a crucial touchdown towards the end of the game.
Yeah, an Alabama team that usually is consistent with their characteristics on defense, a team that was unable to get off on the field on third down. You felt like they were almost begging them to throw, and even so, they still were able to convert. Like A&M's quarterback had a huge game. They were able to be super balanced too. A key against Alabama, you can't be one-dimensional. I think this shows us that a lot of people thought it was Alabama and Georgia if they were going to be undefeated going into December. It's not as clear-cut for Alabama anymore, and I think that if A&M can get pressure, then that logic, Georgia should be able to harass Bryce Young. Do you think this makes Bama's playoff chances harder, or does it put a little more urgency on them going forward?
I mean, it definitely makes it a little more difficult. I don't know if it's certain that we're going to have two SEC teams in the playoff anymore. We'll wait to see how the SEC shakes out with the championship and the rest of the season. But, I mean, there's teams with the likes of Cincinnati, Ohio State's improving a little bit. Their defense and secondary are getting a little bit better. You got the likes of Iowa this weekend, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But plenty of teams that have plenty of opportunity to make a push for the playoff.
The door is certainly wide open. Another game that we want to touch on, the SEC, Arkansas and Ole Miss, an absolute battle. Corral versus Jefferson, Kiffin versus Pittman. I want to really start by finishing the end of the game, the 2-point conversion. Did you agree with Pittman's decision to just lay it all on the table and say, hey, we're not going to play for overtime, we're going to go right here? Do you think they should have played a little more conservative, especially in a game where it really wasn't certain what was going to happen? You had major plays, explosive offenses. Do you agree with the call?
I mean, this was the first game I was watching, and I thought it was going to be the best game of the day. That proved to not necessarily be the truth, but in terms of whether Pittman made the right decision or not, I think when you're at a hostile environment like Ole Miss, and Ole Miss certainly has the offense to put up points, and you're definitely worried about them scoring in overtime. I think personally I would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
Now the play call, whether or not it was the correct choice, but I like Sam Pittman's choice to go for two there. KJ Jefferson, Traylon Burks had a good overall games, but yeah, it was just a great overall game. Over 100 points scored. Traylon Burks, he had a drive where he mossed a guy basically 2 straight plays in a row. It was like the same sideline play. It was kind of crazy.
It's great.
But yeah, him and KJ Jefferson had a great game. Ole Miss played well as well. Corral, he had 6 interceptions the last time he played Arkansas, and this game, he showed how he can come back from adversity like that. Potentially put himself back in the Heisman conversation after this game. I'm not positive, but we'll wait to see.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss was also able to be really balanced on both sides. They really dominated on the ground game. Corral wasn't far behind. They had 2 running backs over 100 yards. I think the thing with Ole Miss is that they're best when they're unpredictable. When you have Corral who can really, he can chuck at any side of the field. He can make all the throws. But when you can also have a pop play, and I think a lot of great college football teams are able to get that running play. They get you 50, 45 yards. Keep the defense on their toes. They really did that with Arkansas. I was really impressed with Kiffin, how that team responded after getting pummeled by Alabama. Really impressed by both teams' response. Both of them got kind of snapped back to reality, and you saw a really great, well-played football game. It's unfortunate that one team had to lose. I was actually at a friend's house, and their dad said, I hope they both win. Is it possible to give them both a win in the win column? But unfortunately, it's not how it's played, but another really fantastic game this weekend.
Yeah, I think Arkansas and Ole Miss are kind of both like darling teams this year where a lot of people are rooting for them because they aren't always super good. It's been a little bit different this year with a bunch of kind of random teams coming out of nowhere. But yeah, just a great overall game. Another great game at the same time. Another noon game was Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma, of course, coming back from down 28-7 to somehow get the win over Texas.
Somehow. I thought this game was over. I had written down, I was like, Texas is back. And it was kind of like a roller coaster. And I feel for Texas fans because you go, oh my gosh, we're back. Oh wait, could they come back? No, wait, we're good. Texas is back. But, oh wait, never mind. We're not back. Stop it. It was a roller coaster of emotions. I think both of our picks, man, you picked Texas as the, and you said, man, Texas might do it to me. They might take that pick and make me regret it. And me with Spencer Rattler, man, I think we both had an unfortunate pick there. What do you think was the turning for Oklahoma to bench Spencer Rattler? Was it his inability to move the ball, or his decision making? What did you see from Caleb Williams that really turned the tide?
It was a combination of a lot of that stuff. I mean, Rattler hasn't looked overly impressive this year, and when Texas came out and was up 14-0 within the first 2 minutes, I mean, you're playing from behind that whole time. Rattler didn't help him, and eventually Lincoln Riley was basically like, you know what, let's give Williams a shot here. He capitalized on his opportunity, and now I think Lincoln Riley has a tough decision to make coming up this coming week.
The conversation is certainly going to be Spencer Rattler or Caleb Williams. I think you got to ride with the momentum that you have. Certainly a huge win, not only saving your season, because a bad loss against Texas could potentially derail your spot in a year where we have a lot of new teams, and a lot of new teams have momentum. And it's not something that Oklahoma necessarily had going into this game. I think Caleb Williams provides the spark they need. He was electric. He made plays when he needed to. Over 300 total yards, 3 touchdowns, and was able to lead the game-winning drive. A play where I was just in awe. Last-second play, you can't make this stuff up.
It was crazy. I mean, Kennedy Brooks was, in a year when Oklahoma's kind of struggled to run the ball, Kennedy Brooks was able to provide that last-second touchdown, and he had over Oklahoma's total rushing was over 300 yards. Kennedy Brooks had over 200. But it was just a crazy game, another crazy game on a crazy day, and I'm still sitting here speechless on how Texas somehow managed to blow that. I mean, Casey Thompson had a great game. Bijan Robinson had a great game. Sark is definitely looking like he might have Texas going in the right direction. They're not back yet, but it was just a great overall.
Maybe later we can say they're back.
Maybe later,
not yet.
Not right now. Not right now.
I think they said that they were back like 3 separate times. Like you just go on a Twitter timeline during like the third quarter or the second quarter, they're like, I think we really got a shot here. And I was like, don't say it. You're jinxing yourself. You can't do that with Texas.
But we've got another game we can talk about a little bit. Another close game, Penn State at Iowa. Iowa, of course, pulling that one out despite being down a majority of the game. Sean Clifford came out with an injury, which I think definitely changed the tide of that game. Penn State was up, I believe, 17-3 until about the middle of the third quarter. Then Iowa came back. You want to elaborate a little bit on that?
It was really for a long time that game. I thought, wow, Penn State's really making me look good here because I said that they were a number 3 team. What they were doing was really displaying. You and I think both picked Penn State, and They were controlling the ball. They were winning that battle, especially in these Big Ten games. The battle of field position is so important to be able to control. Even if you're not scoring points, you're putting your opponent in uncomfortable positions. I think Penn State was doing a great job, and then Sean Clifford goes down, and it's just like all momentum just left that field, anything they had. Iowa slowly but surely got back into it. They were able to start picking up the passing attack, the running attack. I think that when it gets down to it, it's a battle of survival. You just got to take the ugly win and move on with it. What did you see from Iowa that shows that they're capable of potentially winning the Big Ten and moving forward as a playoff contending team?
I mean, their offense is definitely not great, but it did what it had to do and came back. And at the end, with that last-second touchdown from Nico Regani. And, I mean, Petras, not the best quarterback in the Big Ten, certainly not. But, again, he's leading this team. This team is getting turnovers, which – they had 4 interceptions against Penn State with Sean Clifford. It didn't cost them too much, but later on in the game, with the backup in, it did cost them a little bit. And it shows, at least this game shows for Penn State, how QB depth is kind of important for them. They definitely would like to have somebody with like Will Levis right now, who's
Crucial.
currently at Kentucky, with a big win over LSU this weekend. But anyways, Iowa's proving that they are a tough team to beat, especially at home. They had some good work from their punter, Torrey Taylor, who was able to pin Penn State inside their own 20 a few times. But they showed some grit, definitely.
Yes, and I think with Iowa, it's going to be very important moving forward, improving on the offensive level, especially when you get 4 turnovers in a game. You're going to need them to continue to capitalize and make those opportunities, make the most of them. I think that's what also a lot of these offenses, when you're not really moving the ball that much and you have a defense that's really winning you these games, can a team that plays against a C.J. Stroud in Ohio State that eventually will score, they'll break that threshold, can Iowa develop on offense enough to really make that team a complete team in the Big Ten against Ohio State?
It'll definitely be a challenge for them. We'll wait to see. Penn State also had another injury in defensive tackle P.J. Mustipher, but they get a week off to kind of nurse that injury and get both Sean Clifford and Mustipher back to health. We've got another close game in the Big Ten in Michigan and Nebraska. Michigan winning off of a last-second field goal. I mean, Michigan, not the best of games. Nebraska has looked improved, and it is their 3rd loss in 4 weeks to a ranked opponent in Oklahoma, Michigan State, and now Michigan. They only lost those 3 games by a combined 13 points. So while Scott Frost has not had the career at Nebraska that I'm sure most people were hoping he would have, it may be potentially going in the right direction. He has lost 14 straight games to ranked opponents, though.
It is tough, but you can see that Nebraska is starting to turn around. There was a lot of belief this year that they were going to be able to compete, be able to finish games, but we haven't really seen that yet. I do think that their players are fighting for him. I don't think necessarily we need a dramatic coaching change or anything like that in Nebraska. Martinez played fine. They were able to move the ball against a really good Michigan team. But I think with Michigan, they're just going to keep finding new ways to win. No matter what it is, they're just going to take it. In a year where they've really improved on offense, they've really shown that they can score points and be able to control the game. I think that for Michigan, especially at that point, it's just about finding those certain ways to win. They can't take this and they got to take each game in stride, basically. And really, in a battle where the Big Ten, you've got a lot of teams that are setting themselves up for success. Sometimes the W's all you need.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be tested early on in the year where you can find out what your team is truly made of. But as it gets later in the year, they're going to face tougher competition, the likes of Ohio State and Michigan State, and we'll see how they're able to respond in those games. I mean, Michigan's kicker had a pretty good game, 4 for 4 on field goals. Jake Moody, of course, with the winner. And it was actually their first win in Lincoln.
Wow,
so,
really?
A little interesting tidbit there.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I mean, pretty good game. Again, a great game on a great slate.
It's a great weekend. Like, you had so much going on. I think that you couldn't really lose. You know how certain games you're like, oh, I really hope this turns out well. This weekend you could not lose when picking a game to watch.
I know.
I wish they had like a college football red zone.
Basically,
I really
yeah,
do.
that would be nice. That would be nice. But we've got another game, same score actually, and with a similar circumstance in where Notre Dame wins 32 to 29 at Virginia Tech on, again, a last-second field goal. Jack Cohn, he was benched early on in this game. They have had trouble with their quarterback play all year. And eventually, though, he came back in the game because the freshman, Tyler Buchner, I believe his name is.
Right.
He came in and was playing the majority of the game, but I believe got injured. So Cohn was able to come in with that experience, with that leadership, and lead the team to a win, lead the team to a game-winning drive where he set up the field goal. But again, quarterback issues for Notre Dame. It's been an issue all year.
It really has been. You can see from game to game that they're really struggling to find an identity on offense. They don't really know what they're going to be. It feels like the team from Clemson in 2018 when they had Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence, who had different styles of quarterback. While Clemson was winning games and Notre Dame's not necessarily capitalizing on certain opportunities. They only had the one loss to Cincinnati. But I think it's all about finding an identity. I think with Jack Cohn, he was able to show a lot of resiliency and a lot of leadership. It's tough to be benched when you're the starting quarterback. You go through the summer, go through the spring, you get all these certain circumstances, and you're really able to evolve as a quarterback going through that. I think Bo Nix had that similar understanding, that certain story against LSU. I think Notre Dame might find some new momentum with this win against Virginia Tech in a tough environment at Blacksburg.
It was indeed a tough environment, and Braxton Burmeister, the Virginia Tech QB, was playing a resilient game as well. He also got injured and came out for a little bit, but was able to. We just had a quick stop, real quick. But anyways, Burmeister, he came in, played a resilient game, got injured, had to come back in late in the game, and still almost was able to take down Notre Dame. Notre Dame, they keep finding ways to win. But at the beginning of the year, Jack Cohn was playing well, and I think we would have talked about how Wisconsin potentially made the wrong choice with keeping Graham Mertz and not Jack Cohn. But now, I don't know how it's looking now. It might be a little bit different. But
yeah, and I think that's an interesting conversation with the transfer portal, this whole new different style of how we're evaluating players and evaluating this new scene. Like we got NIL, we got transfer portal, a lot of new stuff develops. And I think Notre Dame's another team that's going to have to take it in stride and find new ways to win, regardless of who it's with at quarterback. Jack Cohn, Drew Pine, Tyler Buchner, whatever it's going to be. I think that Brian Kelly is good enough of a head coach to be able to take the roster he has and really just win with it.
I would be inclined to agree. Let's move on to the Georgia and Auburn game. Georgia, of course, thumping Auburn. It wasn't much of a competition. They win 34-10 at Auburn, dominate yet again. Any thoughts on this game?
I think that Georgia continues to separate themselves. Stetson Bennett, you had a lot of great balance, a lot of great play from Georgia. Their defense, as usual, keeps flying around, making such big impact plays. I was really impressed by the play of Darnell Washington from Georgia, the guy that I haven't really seen play yet. He's such a force out there. He's such I think he's like 6'8" or something like that.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Something like that.
The catches that he was making, I was like, oh my goodness. Like, he is unstoppable. And no matter who the quarterback is for Georgia, I think they're going to be fine. Their defense continues to fly around, make turnovers. They made Bo Nix's life very uncomfortable, especially after a week where I basically sung his praises. I was like, man, I think he's got a lot of momentum going into this game. It's unfortunate. He's got to play the number one team in the country. They continue to be the team, in my mind. They're number one, and the rest of the teams are trailing far behind. Pretty
much. Yeah, Bo Nix wasn't able to ride that momentum that he had last week. But, this just proves Georgia's dominance, really. I mean, Stetson Bennett, their backup QB, is playing great. It's maybe a bit of a conversation whether he should be starting over JT Daniels. We'll wait to see. But they're able to find weapons in the receiving game, like Ladd McConkey, while the rest of their receiving core is injured. But, yeah, just a great overall game for Georgia. The running game was able to open up in the second half after they were large. And sorry, their running game was able to open up in the second half after the first half. They were having a bit of issue against Auburn's defense, but they were largely able to milk the clock, run the ball, and secure the W.
Yeah, and I think that Georgia moving forward, they're just going to have to keep finding ways to win, finding ways to dominate. I think for Kirby Smart, this is the time to really start to have that sense of urgency, not take a step back, because it's very clear and apparent. The media is going to be talking about it. Everybody's going to be talking about it. Georgia is going to be the team. They're the it factor. I really, really am excited to see what he does moving forward not as a quarterback, as a coach. Now the stigma's out. Bama is gone. They're down in they're still going to be in the top four, but they're not as this big bad Bama threat. It is Georgia versus the pack.
Pretty
What
much.
goes on from here? How does he evolve as a coach from here? How does that team continue to get better from here?
I mean, it's improving, I think, in the on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, their team is about as dominant as you can be defensively. And if they're able to unlock kind of that next level into being an elite offense, I don't know if it's possible or not, but we'll wait and see. If they're able to unlock that elite offensive side, it's pretty much a wrap, if we're being honest.
Yeah. I think that it's a team. It reminds me of a 2015 Bama team or a Bama team from the past. I keep referencing to Bama because to be the man, you got to beat the man. It was if they got to a certain point total, it was over.
Pretty
you could
much.
find this with like the Ravens from the 2000s, or you had teams that were dominant on defense. That really it didn't matter if they scored 17 or 20 because if they got to that point, you're not getting the defense is going to continue to stop their opponents. It's really fun to watch this team because it's a new face. We saw them try in 2018. They came up short. Can they make the success? Do you want to go into our playoff predictions?
Let's go ahead and do it.
So
I mean,
another week of first four, and then the next two. We're going to just continue to go each week. We're going to see how we think the college football playoff landscape lines up with those 6 seeds. We won't be as dramatic as ESPN, we promise. But Patrick, do you want to start us off at number 1?
I mean, I think we both got to have the same teams. I believe they were both our number ones last week. But Georgia, again, sitting at the top, nice and pretty. The win over Auburn further solidified their case as the number 1 team in the nation. Great defense, not as great of an offense, but still good. And there really isn't much competition for that number 1 spot.
Yeah, I'm going to have Georgia at 1 as well. I think that whoever the QB is for now, it's going to be fine. They're going to continue to win games. They got a big one against Kentucky again. They're going to continue to get tested. But I think Georgia, their defense, they're going to continue to fly around, make plays on both sides. They're going to be very complimentary in that sense. I got Georgia at 1. It's very easy for me at this point.
All right, what about your number 2?
Number 2, Iowa. They really impressed me this weekend with their resiliency, with their ability to create plays and be able to stay in those games. Their defense is, like Georgia, really good. They fly around. They create turnovers. As their offense continues to get better, I think Petrus's development late in the season is going to be really key to how they fare in the playoff. But for now, they're the number 2 team in the country for me.
At the number 2, I got Cincinnati. I think they handled their business against Temple this weekend. And as for, I just think they're a very solid team, very solid overall offense, solid defense. They can have a bit of issues on offense a bit, but I like their offense more than the likes of Iowa, who can have a bit of trouble scoring points a lot of the time and rely a lot on turnovers. But personally for me, I got Cincinnati at the 2 spot. As for number 3, I'm going to go with Oklahoma.
All right.
I don't know how much I believe in this team with Spencer Rattler, but with Caleb Williams at the helm, it looks like a completely different team. Potentially able to crack that top 4 with him at quarterback. And that comeback win against Texas showed how much heart that Oklahoma team has. And, you know, a lot of people were ranking them top 1, top 2 at the beginning of the season. They've disappointed a little bit up until this point, but I think that win over Texas showed how good they can be.
Yeah, and I think for 3, I got Cincinnati. I like your points with Oklahoma, how they continue to get better. Caleb Williams, we don't know yet necessarily, but I think they got a lot of momentum moving forward. For me, I got Cincinnati at 3. I think Desmond Ridder, they handled business, like you said, against Temple. They're a team that complements each other very well. Another potential spot for the group of 5. If they continue to win, take care of business, that's really all they got to do from here is take care of business, continue to take care of the football. I like Cincinnati at 3. And for me, number 4, I got Ohio State. Ohio State's a team that I was down on early. They lost to Oregon, but I think C.J. Stroud, along with this team, continues to get better. They're making turnovers. They're making things happen on offense. C.J. Stroud looks really more polished than he did against Minnesota, where you really weren't sure what he was going to be. I think Ryan Day, this really shows what he is as a coach. I really like where this team is going, and I think they have a really strong chance to compete for that Big Ten crown.
I would be inclined to agree. My number 4 team is going to be Iowa. If Sean Clifford stays in that game, I don't think Iowa wins, if we're being honest, which is why I can't put Iowa necessarily at that 2 spot. Again, they have troubles with their offense. But I like them here at the number 4. They definitely earned a top 4 spot after this week, beating Penn State and finding a way to come back. But I don't know if I can put them any higher than that right now, just until their offense improves. But at the 5 spot, I have Ohio State.
Yeah.
They've they started out this season not great, but since then their defense has improved, their secondary has improved, C.J. Stroud has improved and is potentially a Heisman candidate. But they had a great game against Maryland, somebody who was potentially in for a trap game with Ohio State with that high-powered offense, but they were able to hold them to 17 and put up 66, which is a pretty impressive number. They've got a great trio of wide receivers, and it's amazing to think how someone like Jamison Williams, now in Alabama, was potentially the third or fourth receiver on that team. Yeah. And he's doing great things at Bama.
It shows the depth that Ohio State has, and they're able to use at their disposal.
They're able to put out 5-star after 5-star on the offensive side of the ball. Not quite there with defense, though they still have very, very good players. And if they're able to solidify their defense and put it all together, put all the talent together, I think they're just as dangerous as a team like Georgia.
They really could be. I think that once they started to figure things out and say, this is what we're going to be as a team, this is what our identity is going to be, it was really fun to watch against Maryland, to be able to, in between commercial breaks of the really big games, you were like, wow, this Ohio State team didn't just crawl away into the corner after Oregon. They're fighting, and that really shows what type of team they're going to be. For number 5, I got Penn State.
Okay.
I think that Penn State is a great team, a potential team that could, after a loss like against Iowa, they might be able to say, hey, we're not done yet. They could pick up some wins against Michigan, Ohio State, potentially really turn the corner. With Sean Clifford in the game, they potentially do win this game. I really agree with that statement, but I really don't like to use what ifs, and especially when we don't really know what happens.
That's fair.
Iowa's continuing to get momentum. I want to see what Penn State does in another big, close game. I want to see them on the road. I really do. I want to see how they respond. They are for me at number 5. Who is your number 6?
My number 6 is going to be Alabama. So last week I had Ole Miss in my top 6, but this week, because Bama lost, I'm moving a few teams in, and I can't put Ole Miss above Alabama because of how they played against Alabama. But Bama is definitely a top 6 team, I believe. You got to knock them down a little bit because of their loss to A&M, but eventually they might crawl their way back up to the 2 spot, so they might just be right back where they were. They've got a good offense, good defense. I think their secondary struggled a little bit, got a little bit tired against A&M, and both their defensive and offensive line don't look the same as it always has. Bama potentially just isn't Bama this year. They're not the unstoppable force that we have pretty much every year. But I'm sure this coming week is going to be not fun for the Alabama players. Nick Saban is going to get them whipped right into shape.
It is not going to be fun for Mississippi State, who has to unfortunately play Alabama this weekend.
Yeah, that is not going to be great
Nick
either.
Saban revenge game.
Yep.
Like I said, for me, I got number 6, Alabama. I think that while they still are capable of being a top 4 team and can potentially beat 5 through 2 on the list, they did not look very impressive to me against A&M, a team that I thought they should have thoroughly beat down, took care of business. I think for Alabama, it's all about finding an identity on defense. They really were a team that was not able to get off the field on 3rd down, something that's crucial for Alabama, very characteristic. A lot of mistakes, unable to get Bryce Young protection. I think, though, this team is very capable, obviously, of getting better each week and being able to recover. But for me, the jury is not really there for me yet, and so Alabama is at 6.
Gotcha. I mean, that's pretty much, again, all we got for you guys. Any closing thoughts, comments, concerns, shout-outs, anything like that?
Well, I just want to say it was a fantastic weekend of college football. The Cover 2 show will be there for your coverage next week as we discuss hopefully another great weekend of football. Man, I was having a blast watching it. I felt like a couch potato all weekend. It was great. Patrick, always a pleasure, man. This was the Cover 2. Thanks for having us. Thanks for listening. And as always, take care.
Have a good one.